T-minus 50 seconds. T-minus 40 seconds. T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to Women's Wrestling Talk. We got a full house today. Woo! Man, here we go. Today we have some serious topics to talk about, but it's also going to be fun. My name is TK Trinidad. I'm the CEO of Women's Wrestling Talk. I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves, what they do, how people can find you, all that good stuff, because I don't think I can do any y'all justice because y'all do a lot. So I'll start with my co-host from Women's Wrestling Talk, Meka, first, and then we'll hop right to the other side of me, Gerard, and then we'll go down below. So hit it, Meka.
Good morning, everybody. Of course, this is Meka, writer and host now for Women's Wrestling Talk, among a million other things that I do. So yeah, I'm excited about this discussion today. It's going to be good.
And Gerard?
What's up, everybody? My name is Gerard Bonner. It's great to be here. What do? Well, I am a commentator for Southern Honor Wrestling, and the promotion has been doing pretty incredible. We just won for Promotion of the Year 3 times, and I've also won for Commentary Team of the Year twice in a row, which it's very rare to have Black commentators in pro wrestling, as you know. So I'm excited about that. I've got my own podcast for pro wrestling called The Faction, which you guys can check out wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow me at Bonnerfied on all the socials. Glad to be here. Thank you, TK.
Thank you for coming on. And Duke?
Hello. I am the Duke, host of the Duke Loves Wrestling podcast. Check me out on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, the whole 9 yards at Duke Loves Wrestling. Also the host of the Tell Us the Truth podcast, a show that dissects systemic racism and figures out ways to come up with solutions on how to deal with that. So I am honored to be here on Women's Wrestling Talk. It's a show that I personally subscribe to and listen to. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you for hopping on. And Blue, I have to apologize. See, I like telling people the behind the scenes stuff. I sent Blue all the links, but I forgot to send him the right link to hop on the show. And I was like, where you at? He's like, I don't have the link. So I want to apologize to you officially, because it was like that was my bad. So I'm glad I check in, but tell people about yourself.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Blue. I'm one half of the Mixed Tag Show with my co-host Jenna, Miss Jenna Baby. She was on this past panel with you guys, I believe yesterday. So yeah, I have a podcast. Yeah, my days are all mixed up. It's a birthday weekend at my house, so like I'm all over the place. But you can check us out, the Mixed Tag Show on Twitter, Instagram, also on Twitch, on YouTube. It's the Mixed Tag Show on all of those. We talk about wrestling on different spans of between different promotions and things like that, and that's what we do on our podcast.
There it is. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the state. Oh man, there's so much PTSD with this. The state of Black wrestling. So let's kind of talk about where it has started to where it is right now. So what do you guys kind of think in the last, let's say, 10 years? Has it improved a lot, or has it improved a little, or is it like a standstill? Do you think they're just giving us crumbs? What do you guys think?
I start off with everybody. I mean, I think it improved a lot, but even with the improvement, it's really still crumbs, to be honest. Like, it's not really to the par or on the standpoint of where it should be in today's age. Yes, we've gone a long way, but I feel like a lot of the long way has been all right here for now until we figure something else out that we really want to do. So I feel like it's still a lot less to be desired in terms of major promotions, but in terms of like in the indie scenes and other things of that nature, I feel like it's grown a lot. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with now we're starting to connect more, like panels like this, where we're starting to find people that look like us speaking out more and connecting more. So we're able to find out more from different places. Like, I wouldn't find out about Southern wrestling if it wasn't me starting to follow Gerard. You know what I'm saying? Things like that nature that's starting to really help us. I guess social media is helping us to connect more within our community.
You know, as somebody who was a tape trader, especially as a young kid in the '80s, I remember Japanese wrestling was the thing that we were being exposed to, and we were excited about because it was different, and we continued to push that until it was actually featured in the major promotion seriously and what have you. I feel like that's what we're seeing today with black wrestling. You know, it's something that has been disregarded and disrespected for so long. And really, it's been more like the past 6 years where you've seen more of an emphasis and a focus on developing black wrestlers on a larger scale, giving them sensible storylines long term. You see more black world champions than ever before. So I feel like there's been improvement, certainly a long way to go, but comparing it to what we've seen in the past, night and day, for sure.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I mean, going back to the 80s and even before then, in the territories, there was a time where you could only have one black wrestler per territory. And if you had a second one, they were literally fighting for that spot as opposed to fighting for the top spot in the promotion. So looking in terms of how it's improved over the years, I think it's been dramatic. Right. At the same time, I think the wrestling industry ends up being a microcosm of larger society. And so when we look back in terms of how the black wrestler was portrayed, I mean, if you go back and watch some of those videos, the fact that Roddy Piper did blackface at WrestleMania, right? And people cheered, you know, and then in the 90s, when Ron Simmons point blank asked Vince McMahon, hey, why hasn't there been a black world champion? People booed. So a lot has changed in that regard, in terms of how the major promotions view things. I think we're seeing a renaissance and a revolution. I really can't call it a renaissance because it's never happened before. It's a revolution that we're seeing in terms of what the black wrestler is able to do. A lot of that is being helped in independent wrestling, where it is bananas what's happening right now with black wrestlers. The two recognized independent world champions are both African American, which is bananas when you think about that. And so a lot of strides are being made in terms of how we're presented. We're no longer presented as one monolithic type of character. We're being showcased in layers and things of that nature. And with that said, just like in society, there's so much more that needs to be done. And I won't jump too far ahead, but I'll say that I think part of the reason that we're even talking about this is because what we're starting to see in front of the camera. But there's way more work that needs to be done both in front and behind the camera. And I'm sure we'll get to that later.
Facts.
We will. We also taking some of these comments. I actually saw this on social media yesterday. So Provide 24/7 says, damn, didn't realize Brock has beaten every black wrestling champion. It's not funny, but it's funny. And even though Bobby was hurt, he still got Kofi treatment. Does anybody want to speak to that? And do you think it's just a coincidence or do you think it's on purpose?
Nothing is a coincidence with Vincent K. McMahon. There are no coincidences there. Maybe how it happened, but it definitely, everyone gets the Brock treatment, and unfortunately our world champions are not exempt from that. And we'll just keep seeing him beat anybody they put the strap on until he's ready to go home. So it's kind of just one of those things that's unfortunate that it is him that has been the one to take the belt off of them, but not a coincidence at all.
I heard a slightly different take on that, and I'll just offer that. And some would say, well, the fact that Brock was the guy that did it meant that these champions must have meant a lot, because you didn't have the Miz do it. You know, you didn't have some of these other people who weren't quite Brock Lesnar doing this. So that's another perspective on it. I mean, it's hard to say with moments like this. And where it becomes hard is, on the one hand, you have what happened with Bobby Lashley yesterday. The other hand,
I guess that. He was on a good point too.
I know. I was looking forward to it.
I was looking for that, but we might hop back into that because I want to talk about my PTSD with Naomi.
I feel like for me, I feel like it's not much of a coincidence. Like, you know, Meka said, I don't believe in coincidences. I feel like, and I said this on our podcast, I feel like the WWE Championship has actually taken a step back to the Universal title and has taken a role as a secondary title, as a workhorse title in a sense, where they put the title on the people that's like the people are behind. Because if you see, like you said, the mirror of today's age, we're behind the Bobby Lashley, behind the Kofis and the Big E's, and even Drew McIntyre's in a sense. But they're not really getting the top billing that they deserve, because they're falling behind Roman. And when you look at it, the IC title, the US title has been diminished completely. Like, they wasn't even defended on the pay-per-view yesterday. And WWE Championship has come into that role of the workhorse. And now that they want to put the emphasis back onto the WWE Championship, they put it back on Brock. But when it's not in, you know, prominent roles, even though Big E did an amazing job with the championship, they still took it off him and then just, you know, demoted him in a sense. And that's how I look at it.
You know, I think with the WWE, at the end of the day, whatever they feel is going to make the most money, that's what they're always going to focus on. And it's unfortunate. I'm not too sure what happened with the Lashley situation, because he is injured with the shoulder. But did Brock Lesnar do that to him, though? Or was that an injury that existed before they had their match at the Royal Rumble? I think that especially Bobby Lashley, who is my champion, whether he has the belt or not, Bobby Lashley, I can relate to him more than probably any world champion that we've had in years. You know, on a personal level, I just respect and honor and appreciate that guy for the way that he carries himself and the way he does his business. There's no reason to take the belt off of him if he's not injured. I don't even feel like they should have taken the belt off of him before. I don't feel like they should have broken up the Hurt business. So, in my personal opinion, I think we still have elements of that old racism that still has enough influence in the WWE, especially behind the scenes, to start the whisper campaign. Well, you know, we didn't sell as many tickets with so-and-so on top. Well, you know, we're hearing that the TV ratings may be not so good. Well, you know, the social media is not. There's somebody whispering behind the scenes that's cutting us off at the knees. And it's unfortunate, because you see it with the women, especially as well. Why would you take the belt off of Bianca Belair when she literally has the potential to be as big as Hulk Hogan? I mean, just a crossover star that the world will know. She could be as big as The Rock. You know, she has that type of star power. For you to take the belt off of her instead of treating her more like a Charlotte Flair, where she's the standard bearer, there's somebody behind the scenes who's pushing those buttons. And quite frankly, WWE, it's very disappointing and frustrating when you do things like that.
Yeah.
Just to add on to that, it's the same situation where for the Royal Rumble, it was a clear choice to make Sasha the winner, because then you would have Sasha and Charlotte run that back. You run everything else back. Why don't you run that back when you owe Sasha so much? In a sense of, like, she basically put Charlotte over those first few years. Why couldn't she get that back? And then I feel like last year they gave us the two black women main eventing the first night when they should have really main evented the entire weekend. But you gave them the first night, and then you didn't want to run it back where, all right, we're going to have Bianca and Sasha face off against your champions, and then they both have potentials to win. It's like, why not? That makes the most sense out of everything.
Just to with the Bobby Lashley thing, they did say that his shoulder got hurt during the match with him and Brock and the suplexes a while ago. So he's been working with this hurt shoulder for a while, and now it's time to go and get surgery. So they said that it's been hurt for a while, which also kind of makes me feel about the whole situation,
Right.
but hopefully he gets the surgery he needs, and we know he's going to recover quick and be back to try to get his hands back on what's his, hopefully.
The job that Bobby Lashley has done, especially over the past 2 years, for him to miss a WrestleMania payoff is just heartbreaking. Because in my opinion, that man has built himself up so well, and with the package with MVP, he should be a main eventer one of those nights. You know what I mean? There's no reason why you couldn't have had a Bobby Lashley versus a Lesnar or a Roman Reigns. So it's just, again, it's frustrating to see things like this.
So another line that I kind of don't want to talk about, but I do want to talk about. I mean, we didn't mention Bianca. I definitely think that there is that whisper there, but they also might think that she's young, so she has time. That's one thing. But somebody who's not as young is Naomi, and this it's like there's times where I can't even watch. It's just it's and I she did get the win and all this other stuff, but it's just the angle of it. And I want to know if it's just me. Like, is it just me? Like, is this a whole Karen situation? Like, do you think somebody is unknowingly planning this and they just think that this is just fun? Or do you think this is like very intentional?
I think it's very intentional. Keep it 100.
I think it's intentional as well.
Like, she's been the most over. She's the one that trends the most on Twitter. As soon as she hits, you make her disappear at times again, and as soon as she pops back up, she's trending on the internet. You was upset because she made your title actually presentable when she added the lights and made it her own, but there was no issues when everybody else customized their titles. You know what I mean? Like, the kids love that title. Like, that's what your target audience is, kids. So why would you be upset that she took a step forward that you didn't think of? So I feel like from that moment on, when they're like, all right, she maybe should be smarter than us, or she's a little bit too over than our favorites, that they just start just diminishing her light.
I think with the current storyline that they're using, this whole Karen stuff, it would be fantastic if there was a title involved. If Naomi was working from behind and the forces were against her, and we've seen this company do that storyline a million times over, it makes sense if the payoff is at WrestleMania when she gets the title. But clearly that's not what's happening. So in essence, this is more of a Booker T and Triple H as opposed to a feel-good Kofi Kingston story. And again, that's frustrating because it's like there's easy money here to be made. And Naomi is somebody that everyone loves. She is another crossover star. Like you said, she trended everywhere. Everyone's writing articles about her. Mainstream media went nuts over her because she is a beautiful black queen. Why aren't you putting the rocket ship on her back and getting out of her way? It makes no sense.
Yeah, I take issue with the fact that every time we see her get a push, it is on the side of or on the heels of another, and I hate to say this, but another white female superstar. There's no reason why she could not have been on this card by herself without Ronda Rousey. There's no reason why when Lana's situation happened, they had to put them together. Now, did she make the best of the situation? Absolutely. Because that is who Naomi is. Whatever you give her, she is going to make glow, for lack of a better term, right?
Yep.
But she shouldn't have to. We don't even know the purpose of the hate that Sonya Deville has in this storyline for her. You said a lot of things, on the promos, and everyone's kind of like, no, that's never been Naomi's character. Like, we don't know who you're talking about. You're trying to justify this, and it's like, the woman has been here 10 years. She's celebrating her 10th year with the company this year, worked her way up from dropping it to the floor with Brodus Clay and Somebody Call Your Mama. And she deserves to be here. And she deserves to be able to stand on her own 2 feet. A couple of months ago, or maybe weeks, we saw Xia Li come out and be a protector for Naomi. And it's like, for who? For Naomi? Absolutely not. So I just want them to stop feeling like she needs to be attached to somebody other than her own self. She has all of the tools and ingredients to be who they want her to be, or who they don't want her to be, who they're scared for her to be, on her own. Let her do that. Let her flourish, because they diminish her every time they put her behind or beside somebody who honestly doesn't deserve to be with her.
Do you think it's because she's like a black female? Because I think of like the New Day, and yes, they're not necessarily treated great, but they got a lot going on. They're allowed to do certain things on their own as far as their own projects, etc. So do you think it's also a state of sexism as well in pertaining to Naomi?
Well, I will say this. My apologies. My computer went crazy.
No worries.
Anyway,
back.
Technology.
yeah, it's good to be
Welcome
back. I was losing it. But I will say this. We have to remember, and this might not be popular, but racism and sexism are very close siblings. And seeing them appear in the world of pro wrestling is nothing new to us, and so when I talked earlier about how, back in the day there could only be one of us in a promotion, now the question is how many of us can be at the top at the same time. And that's what we're seeing right now. For whatever reason, they see more value in Bianca Belair than Naomi. Why? I don't know. And this is no knock to Bianca. I think what we're seeing with the rise of Bianca is great. But one of the challenges is, don't say that I should just be happy that we have the rise of Bianca and not give any space to Naomi, because you certainly had no problem having a Charlotte, having a Becky, having whomever else, Natalia and all of these other people show up at the top of the card. While when it comes to the African-American female, we can only afford to have one per brand if we have that, So I think that's a major issue. And, you think about that match with Naomi and Charlotte, which I thought was an incredible match. But I'm sitting here going, she didn't just become able to do that. She's always been able to do that. They've always touted her as the best athlete in WWE. Well, why not give her the opportunity to showcase that? And so I think it's all super problematic. And that's why we're having this discussion, because we aren't anywhere until we get to the space where they're comfortable having multiple people that look like us at the top of the card without us having to fight for that. Then that's why we're continuing to fight and have these discussions.
Agreed.
Ooh. Damn, I don't even know if we should just stop right there. It's just it is crazy. But one of the things, another point to that is one of the reasons why we're not seeing, we're seeing more than we have seen in the last 5 years. But is that also because just take America? There's 13% African American, so they're catering to that market as it is. So for instance, in LA, most of the hip hop radio stations, all 90% of them are Latino hosts, but that's because it's a huge Latino market. I know it sounds insane, because when I see other places, it's like, nah, it's hip hop, it's black people, that's it. LA is not like that. But then you realize that the people who call in, the people who buy tickets, the people who show up and support are Latino, so they're going to cater to that market. They're going to cater to the market that kind of is supporting. So do you think that's the same thing with the bigger promotions, with like WWE, where it's like they look at their demographic and they look at the people who are showing up, and it's more, non-black folks? Although I've seen in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, I think somebody may mention to it in the beginning of the show that now we have Black Wrestling Alliances in here, and it's because of him that I actually know all of you guys.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just because I saw him, I was like, oh, somebody, he's highlighting people that I know, and then I'm seeing other podcasters, and that was because of him. I wouldn't have eventually would have all kind of connected, but that was because of him that you just see all these people. So do you think it's kind of what side do you think? Do you think if they put more black wrestlers, more black folks will show up and support? Or do you think it's just kind of like we're showing up and supporting, but this is the amount of people that are showing up, so they're catering to that number?
Well, please, Gerard.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, with WWE, let's be honest about what they're doing here, because they've always done well with black audiences, and they continue to, as they call it, over-index. Well, what does that mean? That means that there's more black folk watching their program than most other programs, period,
Mm-hmm.
across the board, especially in the time slots when WWE is on television, right? So there's no question about the fact that they've always attracted a multiracial fan base. What's happening with the WWE is that they realize, hey, we're a publicly traded company and we tout ourselves as equal opportunity, and we need to continue to maintain that so we can avoid congressional leadership doing hearings and things like that, you know what I mean, and investigating us and then calling us out on our racism. So it's been a very deliberate effort, especially over the past 5 to 7 years. WWE brought out an outside company to evaluate their entire business, not just the wrestling, but also corporate, and identify where they needed to improve as it relates to sexism and racism. So that's why you see more equitable diversity in the company. That doesn't mean that they're perfect, but the changes that you see over the past 5 to 7 years are unlike anything you've ever seen in that company before. It's very deliberate. It's a business decision, but it's not so much because they're trying to attract more fans. They're trying to make sure their books don't get opened up. People don't start really digging around, and they don't be put in a position where they get sued to high heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And then the company really gets turned upside down. Then the chairman of the board really gets kicked off. Then the company really loses control over their family business. So I'm not going to credit them as having some kind of come to Jesus moment where they're doing the right thing. This is business. This is all business with them.
To Duke's point, I think whenever we talk WWE, we have to always remember at the end of the day, they are an entertainment company by their own admission. They're not a wrestling company. And so since they're no longer a wrestling company, they will always be more interested in what is the financial bottom line. And to Duke's point, after what Vince went through in the 90s, the early 90s, getting sued by the federal government, he wants nothing to do with that. So whatever keeps him away from that, he's totally cool with. So to that point, you know, there's not this great come to Jesus moment that says, oh, we care about the African-American consumer. Now, here's the other real challenge when it comes to pro wrestling. The black wrestler does not want, just like everywhere else in the world, we don't want to be in certain spots solely because we're black.
Mm-hmm.
The real challenge is, how do you get the Caucasian, the Latino, everybody else to cheer for the black wrestler? It's the one reason why Kofi was able to become WWE champion. It wasn't because we pushed it for it. It's because everybody else pushed for it. So the challenge is, how then do these folks appeal to this broader audience, which some could say falls in the responsibility of WWE. Other pieces of it falls in the responsibility of that particular wrestler. With that said, I don't think we have that case in terms of Naomi not doing what she needs to do, several others not doing what they need to do. They've proven that. And African Americans across all sports, we dominate. Let's just call a spade a spade. Look at the NBA All-Star game is this weekend, right? We just finished the Super Bowl. All of these spaces, we dominate. WWE is aware of that. AEW is aware of that. And I think where we have to get to is this awakening that says we should be viewed equally, just as you view everybody else. I'm not good, and I'm going somewhere else, and we'll come back. I'm not good when Tony Khan says, hey, I'm a person of color too. We're all good and we're all winning matches. That doesn't work for me, okay? The question is, what will you now do with Keith Lee, right? What will you do in these other spaces? And it's not enough to say, hey, we gave you guys an album. You guys got a record. Well, thanks for using that for your Black History piece. But the reality of it is, you didn't feel in June the need to give folks a Pride Month album. You didn't do that. You just said, hey, here's Nyla, here's Sonny. Y'all are going to accept them. And if you say anything crazy, we're going to kick you out of the building. So when does that level of respect happen for the African-American wrestler, not just in WWE, but in AEW as well? Those are the real kinds of questions, and I think they have to be answered. And I hope that there's real work being done to help make that happen, because it's not an absence of talent.
Yeah, the one thing that I have to remember, especially with our major promotions, is they've shown us time and time again that they are reactionary.
Very much.
They are not proactive. They respond to things late, right? So they're not going to do things ahead of time in order to make sure we're good. We're going to wait until we get criticism and then go back and fix it. For example, Jade. They feel like we should be satisfied because our inaugural TBS champion is a Black woman. Y'all did that for you. You didn't do that for us. You did that because of her look. You did that because if anyone is flipping the channels and stopping on TBS and they see this beautiful Black woman with all these muscles and this belt on her arm, people are going to stop. It was not for us. WWE has shown that so many times. And so because we know that, that's the piece that I feel like Gerard was speaking to, where it's partially on the fans, but we should not have to hold them accountable for what they already know. You know where you have been lacking all of these decades, right? WWE, for example, AEW gets a lot more heat now because they're here in the time of social media. Like the whole thing that happened with Big Swole, they took heat. They took heat. They took heat. But Sheeta took no heat and said almost the exact same thing in her interview, right? So it's all reactionary. It's all to pacify. And so I think once they figure out that that's not enough and that we are not an effect, we are in fact the cause, and y'all need to realize that and figure out that, we're going to keep having to fight for what we get.
I think that a lot of times as podcasters, as fans, and anything of that nature, I feel like a lot of times we look at these corporations and expect them to do the best things. And sometimes we have to admit to ourselves that we watch not for these promotions, we watch for these wrestlers. And that's who we're supposed to be supporting. So like a lot of people, like when the whole situation happened with WWE, like to be honest with you, I had to take a break from WWE because after a while, a lot of it, like I said, it didn't sit right with me. Even with AEW, I had to step back from AEW for a while, and Jenna had to pull me back. It was like, yo, we have to support these wrestlers in a sense. You know what I mean? Like this, for instance, with this Big Swole situation, it was just like, damn, like you know what I mean? Like you could have accepted that a whole lot better than the way you did. But then you have to remember that these are billionaires who are not connected to us, so they don't really feel like they have any obligation to us as long as their money's green. Same thing with Vince McMahon. Like, you know, the same thing with Vince. As long as his money's green, he doesn't have to cater to us. So at the end of the day, we have to remember that we're supporting these wrestlers and hoping that they reach the goals that we want for them. And that's the best way we can do about it. And that's it at the end of the day. Like, I don't think that anything they've done, AEW, WWE, whoever it may be, anything they've done in the past year, 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, had nothing to do with any of us. It's what's making sense to them in their pockets. And so we have to stop looking to them and hoping that they're going to validate us and cater to our feelings, because they're not. At the end of the day, they don't care for our feelings. They care about what's making money in their pockets and putting butts in the seats. So at the end of the day, honestly, that's been my whole thing for the past 6-8 months is like, yo, just support the wrestlers, because these corporations don't give a fuck about us. Excuse my language.
So do you think that one of the possibilities, so let's talk about, how, our suggestions on how to improve this. Like, do you think one of the possibilities, and I know there are Black indie wrestling promotions around, but do you think if we put we pool our money together and do a TV Black wrestling promotion where we see more Black wrestlers, and it's still going to be open to everybody else? I don't know if you guys saw, there was on HBO or Showtime a documentary called Fat Tuesdays, which was talking about the comedy stores in Los Angeles and the particular Black night, which was Tuesday, and it was open to everybody, but it also highlighted Black comics, and they were able to actually get jobs off of this. So do you think that that's the way to go? so we can see more, more fleshed out storylines. Because I remember WWE, there was a big announcement that they hired like 2 female Black writers, but are they still there? Where they like? I haven't heard from them.
One of them
Like,
got canned the next week because she got on a interview admitting that she didn't know who the wrestlers were, who our champion was. She didn't know anything, so they sent her on to the house, and we don't know what happened to the other nice lady. So.
The other nice lady. I think for one, I think this is why conversations like this and outlets like this become super important. We perish because of a lack of knowledge. And so in a lot of cases, some folks don't even know who's who in the zoo. They don't know that there are other promotions out there. Here in Atlanta, Jonathan Gresham just started Terminus, right? Him and Baron Black, and they're bringing in some incredible folks in Southern Honor. Like literally, I'd probably say 75% of our roster are African Americans. It's nuts to see, and it wasn't intended that way. It's just that they're great wrestlers and they end up being showcased. So I think we have to do our research and find out. And it's just like the music business, right? The larger corporations and labels aren't the ones that are going to make the difference. It's what we do on the independent side. And once they see the independent side popping, then they want to get their hands on them. That's why a lot of the talent that has been recently signed to WWE and AEW, they popped in indie land first. And so I think that's where we get the opportunity to support spaces, to support, spaces like this and Black Wrestling Alliance and Southern Honor and Terminus and all of these spaces that are really Fight Club Pro and these other spaces that are supporting African Americans. We need African Americans, just like in the NFL, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera. We need people, somebody's got to sit in the room and say, hey, wait, you can't say this because this is going to offend this people group. If you want to lose this whole audience, you can't do that. You can't say that. You can't portray us in that particular way. Because I can tell you this, there's awareness in other communities sitting in those offices. That's why they haven't had slip-ups for Sonny Kiss and for anybody else. They're not slipping in terms of what pronouns to call people. You don't hear people calling the elimination chamber the gas chamber, right? There's an awareness of what these things mean. And so we have to be able to be in the room of the bookers. We have to be in the room of the executives to be able to ensure that decisions regarding what people like us look like on screen are actually cared for, because you can't expect someone who doesn't look like me to be able to identify with me and then portray me in the proper perspective. And I'll also say this, we need people telling our stories, so that's where everybody here doing podcasts and the like, telling these stories becomes important, because we get to be voices that are not influenced by these other promotions. So we can actually speak truth to power in that regard as well.
In my lifetime, I always bring it back to politics because that's my background, but I'm in Boston. In my lifetime, I've seen the first Black governor of Massachusetts. I've seen the first Black mayor of the city of Boston. I've seen the first woman mayor of the city of Boston. I've seen the first Black president. That didn't happen overnight. That was a lot of people on the outside pushing those up top to change. That was a lot of people on the outside, some of them getting into the inside, pushing from the inside to change things. So I agree 100%. The indies need to be celebrated, supported. People need to develop experience in booking, in writing, and what have you. But up top still needs to keep that door open, which means that somebody needs to be pushing from the outside and the inside, because that's where the most money is. And that's not going to change anytime soon. I mean, the WWE just made over $1 billion in 1 year. That's a lot of money. Some of our people should be getting a decent chunk of that money, especially considering the fact that we are the top athletes in this nation and oftentimes around the world, as Blue pointed out. So there's no reason why we should ever stop putting the pressure on these billionaires. And if that means they need to be threatened by Congress or threatened with, we're just not going to spend our money with you or whatever, then that's what we do. You know, part of the reason why Tony Khan continues to conduct himself the way that he does, the guy that told us that he was going to be the alternative, that he was going to be all inclusive, that he was going to be different. Part of the reason why he conducts himself the way that he does is because people enable him to conduct himself the way that he does. He had an opportunity to truly have a wrestling promotion that gave us everything that WWE has not consistently given us. And it's not difficult to do. So how the heck do you have your top wrestlers, especially with the promotion, with the title that's the number one title in the company, the men's title? How come they're all white guys? It doesn't make any sense. For the women, there's a different issue over there. They're barely featured. One match per episode of television per week, depending on which show it is. That's embarrassing. So that's not all inclusive. That's not equitable. That is you doing the status quo because you're letting us know you don't feel that we're going to do anything about it. We got to, I mean, come on, guys. We got to hold these folks accountable. So yes, support the indies, keep putting the money there, keep applying, keep putting your work in there. But don't forget that these billionaires, we need to keep our foot up there, you know what's as well. Both can happen at the same time.
Absolutely.
And then also, we definitely want to shout out Impact Wrestling because they have been game changers for a long time, especially with women's wrestling. I remember we had Gail Kim on. It was like our second episode of women's wrestling talk, and she made mention of it. And then it's like I look back and I was like it's just night and day. How they feature Black wrestlers, how they feature women wrestlers. So there are promotions. I still don't understand. Like they never go away, which is great, but I don't understand why they're just not. They don't make that jump. I don't like. I mean, obviously, I think they do, but I don't know what is missing that like they're not kind of showcased on the same level of WWE because they've been around for a while and they're doing amazing things and they have different storylines. So definitely just want to shout Impact Wrestling for that, and they always show us love too.
I think in terms of Impact, I'm gonna get back to what the other conversation was in a second. I think in terms of Impact, I made this comparison. It's kind of like you said, they've been around for so long, but they made so many mistakes early on. It's kind of like when you go to the restaurant and you went there like 2-3 times and you didn't get your food right. You're like, I'm not going back no more, because that's how it was with me. I watched Impact a few times, and it was after a while, I was like, that's not it. And every time, like, no, Impact is back. It is good. All right, I'm gonna give it a chance. Nah, that's not it. Like, and after a while, everybody's just like, all right, Impact is never gonna get it right. Like no matter what everybody's saying, I trusted them twice. It's not gonna happen. But I do believe now. I've watched more Impact recently, and I do believe that they're doing amazing things in terms of both with the women's and having Black champions as well. And again, to the point of what can we do? I know on our side is a cheap plug. I've been doing more so of Put You On, where we try to find ways to feature independent Black wrestlers. Like you said, it's inclusive to all. Like, I'm not just going to do Black wrestlers, but that's my focus, because that's what's needed, because, we want to introduce the world to more of us and show them what we could do as well, because we're just as good, if not better, at the end of the day. And, of course, I also agree that we need to put these billionaires on the map. Like, yo, you have to do better. You have to call them out when you need to be called out. WWE, AEW, doesn't matter. Like, you have to be called out on what you're lacking of, because you can't just use us for a little bit and then like, all right, we gave you what y'all want and it disappeared, or don't give us nothing at all and we're still waiting. Like, you still have to call them out on those aspects as well. Like we JB said earlier, the conversation with AEW has always been who's the next Black wrestler that's going to be champion. Now you have Keith Lee, so you have no excuse. That's the way I look at it.
If they do it right, I think
that was your conversation, that was your reasoning, that was your excuse. Now you don't have the excuse anymore, because you just grabbed a top star from another company that should have been champion there and brought him over here. I understand that he's in a revolution, going for the TNT title, whatever the case may be, but by the end of this year, it has to be a change. At the end of the day, that's the way I look at it.
Going back to Impact real quick, I will say this. If you get the chance, go to an Impact show. If you do get the chance. I went recently. I was at Hard to Kill, and then I was at the taping right after that. And watching Impact in the pandemic is a lot different than being there, right? And this is with any of our indies with our, not necessarily WWE because it doesn't matter. They survived the Thunderdome era. But for Impact and our smaller promotions, AEW, and then our indie promotions, we have to show up. Yeah. We have to go. We can't talk about what's going on here through hearsay or through watching an episode here or there. Stuff isn't going to make sense. We all know. We watch a show, season 1, episode 2, and then don't watch it again until season 3, episode 4. You like, what's going on here? None of this stuff makes sense. You done missed everything. So we have to rededicate ourselves to diligently tuning in and supporting and showing up, because that's what's going to get eyes on products, right? Is butts and seats, eyes on products, us talking about it, us saying we were there. Look at these pictures. Let me tell you how great this was. Let me tell you about this kid that's coming up trying to do a promotion, or that's a big way that we can contribute to getting impact out of that, kind of gray area where it's mainstream, but it's kind of on us as fans too, and it's tiring. It is. We have a lot of wrestling content to consume. We have wrestling at this point Monday through Saturday most weeks, and it's hard. It's very hard. But I make it a point to go to my local shows. I make it a point to go to new promotions that are trying things out. I make it a point to purchase Terminus and watch the first Terminus, or we just had in Dallas. Black on Four Sides. The card was amazing. The card was absolutely stellar. It had some issues, but it didn't matter. We were there. We showed up. We supported. We got the word out. We were posting and interviewing and things like that. So we have to rededicate ourselves to that as well. We can't just consume it on the surface level and wonder why things aren't changing.
Yeah, Meka, I think you make a great point there. Part of the challenge is we all like being part of the building that's built. Nobody wants to build, right? The reality of it is we are in a phase where if we want to see it, we're going to have to build it or partner with those who are building it. So we have to get good with the fact that in the building phase, it's not. Let me just be clear. It took WWE almost 60 years to get here. Okay, so when you watch the level of production that happens with WWE and all of these types of things, it's 60 years and $1 billion. Okay, so when you go to your local promotion, they're not going to look like WWE, but that's not the goal. You can't say we want an alternative to WWE and then expect WWE in these spaces that you show up. It doesn't work that way. So we have to get good with the fact that, hey, you know what? There are new promotions coming. There are new ideas coming. Let's get behind the thing that we like and fully support it. And here's what's super cool. These spaces likely need some of our talents. So it gives you the opportunity. Very quickly, I ended up in Southern Honor simply because I was going to the shows and I recognized, oh, wait, you only have one commentator. Yeah, if you need commentary, I'll be glad to help. And I didn't know, I thought they were giving me that good convention talk. Oh, sure, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing we miss sometimes. Sometimes your greatest supporters never tell you they're supporting. So what I found out was, I'm going in my head, well, I've never done commentary before. Are they really going to call me? What they did is they did their research. They pulled up my podcasts. They started, this guy can talk, so on and so forth. So the next show, hey, I'm thinking I'm going for the show. And they're like, hey, would you do commentary tonight? And in my head with 15 minutes to spare, I'm like, absolutely I can. And went and killed it because I knew I had one shot. So I say this, when we talk about getting into the industry and how we make a difference, you can make a difference as a fan, but also do this work if you love this business. Do the podcast, write the articles, do those kinds of things because you don't know who's paying attention. And if you get into the ground level of something that decides to boom, you boom with it. And I think while we're fighting to figure out how do we get in WWE and how do we get in AEW, find yourself a space in your local promotion where you have something to contribute. Maybe you become the official podcast of that promotion, right? Or you become the person who does the interviews exclusively with the wrestlers. Find yourself a space to become valuable, because when you become valuable, everything blows up. I've had crazy opportunities open up because I made that one move. And now when they see, oh, wow, you're valuable, you bring something to the table, then you get a voice to speak about these things that are issues. And now they have no choice but to listen to you because you've proven yourself to be valuable.
I don't think anybody expected to be at church today, but here we are.
It is Sunday.
I mean, it is Sunday, right?
It is Sunday.
My spirit needed a word, okay?
Oh, man. It's hilarious.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. Okay, then. So what I kind of want to wrap it up, but like we did mention a lot of different possibilities as far as helping or assisting in improving the state of Black wrestling. But maybe we could just do like an outline, like more like points, like maybe 3 to 4 points on like in 2022, what we think would improve Black wrestling. So if anybody has like bullet points, maybe we'll just add that to, well, you know, Meka, you know, I like doing article ideas in the middle.
I got you.
Maybe okay, cool. So maybe we could just like bullet points, because I think what I often get tired of, and I'm sure you guys too, is like we talk about all the scenarios that are happening in life with COVID, with racism, with sexism, and we're talking about all of our experiences, but nobody wants to come up with the solutions and then also, you know, implement those solutions or try to. So I think if we can come up with some ideas that we can do or suggestions to help it, because I know we're tired. I mean, obviously we're not going to change WWE from the outside, but how can we get inside WWE? Because like the fact that they hired somebody who didn't know about wrestling, like we need to dig deep into that, because how did that even happen? But you know,
they don't want to hire fans. They don't like hiring fans. They want people that don't know nothing about the product so that they can shape them the way they want them to think. That's why.
Yeah, they're an entertainment company, and so they're not looking for people with knowledge of their product. They think that, I mean, even look at some of the commentators that have come through there lately. They grab people from Major League Baseball, from ESPN, and then they tried to figure out why don't they fit. Well, it's not something that you can, you know, it's not transferable. It doesn't work that way. So yeah, that's to that. I'll let somebody else start on the.
And they've also done that with wrestlers. They've just said they do not want any more indie wrestlers. Right. You just want athletes to turn into whatever you want them to be. And does that work sometimes? Yes. Bianca is an example of that. She had no wrestling ability, had never wrestled anything, you know, outside of whatever. Right. And, you know, she was a track. She was running track. And she's killing it. It doesn't transfer like that all the time.
Because for every Bianca, you have an Omos.
Exactly. So you shoot yourself in the foot when you say, I don't want anyone that's not that's affiliated with this to come in. I want new people. Well, this is what you get then. You get NXT looking the way it looks now. You get a new Level Up show with stars coming up, and we're like, what's happening here? You know, like this is why you get what you get now. So
it's true. I mean, to TK's point, I think one of the first things is to speak up and be consistent about speaking up. When you see something that is just not right, actually put your name on it. And I'm preaching to the choir here, because we all have our own podcasts. We all are writing something, what have you. That's what we do, but that's not what everyone does. You know, part of the reason why AEW is able to do what they do is because their fan base is extremely vocal. And they're letting you know, we want Orange Cassidy. They're letting you know, we want MJF. And I'm not taking anything away from those wrestlers. I mean, they're entertaining, of course. But is Orange Cassidy more entertaining than Ricky Starks? No, of course not. You know what I mean? But are we speaking up enough about Ricky Starks? Are we talking about the fact that he and Keith Lee were tearing it up on the indie scene just a few short years ago, main eventing all over Texas and beyond, turning everything upside down, right? So why can't we have that in the main event of Dynamite or the next pay-per-view?
Yeah.
Those guys can work, right? So I think it's all about calling it out. That's a step. Now, that's not the only step, and I know everyone's going to contribute to this, but on a personal level, what I know, and again, bringing it back to politics, the squeaky wheel, they're going to have to listen. You're forcing them to do it because you keep showing up, and you're letting them know. Because in the beginning, they're going to marginalize you. They're going to say you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. They're going to try to discredit you. But over time, people are going to notice, you know something? You're always talking about this thing. What the heck is going on?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you start to build a movement.
Yeah.
You know, so consistency. Just keep speaking up. That's number one for me.
I'll build off of that point. We have to speak up. I'm going to tell you a situation that happened. And then, as I said earlier, we have to find ways to get involved. So we literally had a situation in Southern Honor about 2 or 3 weeks ago where, without giving all of the details, I'll just say there was a significant degree of racial insensitivity that happened on the card. Very significant. And what ended up happening was one of the guys who has a great Facebook group that deals with African American. Yep, Jabari McIntyre. Yep. So you guys are familiar. Jabari McIntyre was at the show. And so what he did was he came and talked to me immediately after the show. We started talking about the issues. He had put up a post that he pulled down. Someone screenshotted it and sent that post to the head of the organization. The head of the organization, while I'm in conversation with Jabari, calls me over and is like, is this some of the craziest things you've ever seen? And I said, no. And then I spoke my piece. And I ended up talking to him, talking to the head booker. We had a major issue happen. And ultimately, there was a tag team's name who was offensive. The name has been changed. So things happen when we speak up and we have a platform, and we also have an ally inside the organization that can speak to what's happening, because they were ready to pass this off as just, hey, this is a disgruntled fan. This is stupid. This is silly. They had nobody to help raise the awareness to them that said, hey, no, this is a real problem. But here's the first thing they said. Nobody's ever said anything about this before. And so now I had to explain to them why this has been a problem for 3.5 years and why nobody explained anything. So this is why it's important that we speak up both outside and inside of these spaces. So we need you to speak up. We need people to get involved. And people ask, how do I get involved in the wrestling industry? It's really interesting now, because now with doing podcasts, with writing blogs, with reviewing shows, you end up becoming a trusted source if you do it right. You know, think about the people who ended up on these NXT pre-shows and these WWE pre-shows. They are analysts that are not part of WWE, right? So you have the opportunity by getting involved to build an audience, build a consistent group of followers by having something significant to say. Give me 30 seconds to say this. Don't be the podcaster who can only figure out how to cuss to get your point across. Okay. You have to realize that if you want an audience that's going to cross pollinate, that you have to be able to be understood in multiple spaces while still speaking the truth that we speak. So you can't be that you can't be the person that all you know how to do is use 4-letter words and use the same type of no. There has to be intelligent conversation so that you can build an audience, so people can go, I can depend on that person. I can depend on that entity. And then you start getting asked to these spaces. I mean, Pat McAfee, for whatever you think of Pat McAfee, is currently a commentator in WWE because of all the stuff he did outside of WWE.
And he goes hard in the paint too.
He goes hard. He goes hard. And so he's living proof that you can be really good at what you do and be engrafted into the business. So find that thing. In terms of what do we do? If you see these things as issues, be the person that consistently speaks out about it. Be the person that consistently has a solution to offer. So I say, speak out and become a part, because by doing this, you are part of the wrestling industry.
Just to piggyback off of that, I say shout out to Jabari. He's in the chat as well. If you guys,
that's my guy. That's my guy.
Big bear.
Another thing is to unify. I feel like a lot of times we don't know, like this. As most cultures, I feel like we have so much indifference amongst each other that sometimes unification is what's really needed. Conversations outside of certain realms is needed so that we can approach something with a plan, like you said, TK, like with a plan as a union, as one. Because if we're all doing the same thing differently, then it doesn't make the same effect as if we come into it together or on the same accord. We don't have to like each other, we don't have to love each other, but at least we have to respect each other. So that way we could go forward and make sure that change is made where it needs to be made. And also to make sure that we like support each other when we can, like JB said, like he supported Jabari. A lot of times I feel like even if you don't have a podcast, you don't have that talent or whatever the case may be to have a podcast, you also have to support these podcasters. We need to support, because if you're not listening, if you're not sharing, or if you're not supporting when you can or subscribing when you can, then it falls on deaf ears. If we're not growing, then more people can't hear our voices. If you're not telling people to listen, then who's going to listen? You know what I mean? It's like the word of mouth kind of situation. So if you find a podcast that you relate to, or a group that you relate to, or whatever the case may be, you have to share it. It doesn't have to just be shared amongst your black friends. Share it amongst your white friends as well, because they need to hear the same message as everybody else. So at the end of the day, if you don't have the platform, or you don't think you have the talent for the platform, push the platforms that you do support. So that way, that message could continue on to others outside of you. That's why I look at it.
And I'm going to add a bullet, piggybacking off of all of this. I'm going to say it again. And I'm really speaking to the person who feels like a fan, the person who just wants to be a fan, does not want a podcast, does not want to write, anything like that. Rededicate yourself to what you are a fan of. Pay attention to what you say that you love. Yeah. If you love Black wrestling, pay attention to what's going on. Be mindful of where you're spending your money. Be mindful of where you're putting your dollars, because we always talk about the bottom line is the dollar, right? Mm-hmm. Whenever we boycott, whenever we say we're going to stop watching something and we do it, or whenever we say, we're not going to support this day and we do it, change happens. Your dollar matters. Your TV time matters. Where you buy tickets to matter. And I say this because I'm in Dallas. And we all know what's coming to Dallas in a few weeks, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have been reaching out to me that are fans, asking, what do we do that weekend? There's so much happening that weekend. What's important to you? Because what I've been telling people is there's some great shows. We know Impact's going to be here. We know Ring of Honor is going to be here. WWE is going to be here. AEW. We know they're going to be here. Who's the little guys that are going to be here? Where's our Black promotions that are going to be here? Where is your favorite wrestler wrestling at?
Facts.
Show up there, right? We got For the Culture that weekend. We got Wale Mania that's going to pop up that weekend. We got, we got so many great things. I think DFW All Pro is going to put on an all women's show on that Sunday. There's so many ways to control your voice through your decisions as a fan. Mm-hmm. And that's what you got to remember. So as hard as you go for your favorite rapper or your favorite football team, go that hard for your favorite wrestler, your favorite writer, your favorite commentator, your favorite promotion, because that energy, and AEW is a good example of this, and we give them a lot of crap, but I will give them some love here. They listen to the indies. AQA got signed because of the work that she did and the reception she got when she showed up against Jade. Mm-hmm. And we hate that they display most of their women on Dark and Dark Elevation, but does anyone watch it? Does anyone tune into YouTube and watch it? I do. You know why I do? Because I know our Black wrestlers are going to be there, and I know our women wrestlers are going to be there. We only going to get one match every TV show. So let me go and watch where I know they're going to be. Let me make sure that I'm buying merch directly from these wrestlers. Let me make sure that I'm buying, merch directly from the companies that are supporting these people, or listening and reading the interviews that are truly supporting these people as a fan, right? So rededicating yourself in the proper way and making sure that you are investing your time, because it's just as valuable as your money and your voice, in the places where they need to go.
I'm sorry, I just want to add a little point to that. When you find your favorite wrestlers on those AEW Dark and all those situations, share that link from that start point, because they're watching the analytics from those videos to see how many times they watch this match, how many times they watch this match. The matches that you like, start from that point and share that link. I do that a few times with the wrestlers, because they're going to look for see, oh, this number is jumping. We got to move them over to this show. We got to move them to that show. We got to put them on Rampage or whatever the case may be, because they're watching those analytics.
Yeah, let me jump in that and say this. Learn the language that is being spoken. That is the key. The problem for a lot of us is we are trying to protest with the wrong language. Mm-hmm. So you feel like, okay, I'm going to go and carry a picket sign outside of WWE headquarters. That's not how they're paying attention. They're paying attention to your dollars. They're paying attention to what you do and don't say on social media. So if you are, constantly talking about what you don't like, yeah, that matters. Also, if you don't say anything, that matters, right? Because in some cases, it's any publicity works. But I think you have to be really, really careful of making sure you're using the right kind of currency in the right spaces. There are some spaces that are paying far more attention. It's like most companies. Yeah, you can choose not to buy, but if you go off on the socials, they don't want their social presence messed up at all. Mm-hmm. So they're gonna respond and do and say what you need to be said. My man Jabari, I don't know that he realized what he did when he put that one post up, but that did more than if he picketed outside of SHW. That did more than if he, no. This is what you do. So learn the currency of the space that you're trying to impact, because once you begin speaking their language, you can at that point get whatever you want.
And then also, Justin, a thing with that, aside with that, even just kind of going back to Naomi, we go hard for Naomi in the paint for social media. However, just behind the scenes, I've had several conversations about this, and somebody behind the scenes told me that if she doesn't say where we need to go, then WWE is not going to do anything. So on the flip side, like we're just waiting. And, I don't know if Naomi knows that. But it's just kind of like, even any wrestlers who are listening to this, it's just kind of like, it's like we have to partner together. And so that's where, that particular situation with Naomi, that's where there's that influx. Cause like WWE's like, well, she ain't saying nothing. And we don't know, it's, so that's really, frustrating, because I know a lot of people are Team Naomi, but you notice like she stays away from that stuff for whatever reason. And that's one of the reasons why she's also not getting that kind of push.
And I think sometimes we forget this. This is the hard part, as I thought about some of the things we didn't say in Southern Honor that we should have. This is one of the challenges that African Americans have in any workplace. When you speak up about something, you run the risk of costing yourself everything.
Leo Rush.
Exactly. I knew in the moment when I spoke up for Jabari, I could cost myself my job right now, because I am telling the boss and I'm telling the booker, this is absolutely wrong. It should have never been done. And now I'm putting voice so they could look at me as he's the problem. He's got to go. And I think this is the juxtaposition that African Americans in business have. We can see something that's horrible, but then the question is, do I speak up and potentially risk my paycheck? Do I risk the opportunity to feed my family or be a part of a business that I love to speak up for something that's right that may not ever change, Right. And so I don't think people often think, what's the cost? Like, only Naomi knows at this point what she believes the perceived cost of her speaking up, saying, I should be in the championship picture could be, right? So maybe she feels like she has to have an advocate for her. And unfortunately, a lot of us feel like, who's going to speak up for us if, I raise this up? I don't want to go down in flames on my own. So I think that's the equally tough part about being Black in spaces like this, that our counterparts don't have to think about. I often tell this story about the difference. Sammy Guevara went onto a podcast and said, I want to rape Sasha Banks. And he got slapped on the hand. And he's your current TNT champion.
Carrying
two belts. Jackson Riker was very public about the racist things he had to say, and everybody around him got fired except for him. It's just this type of thing happens too often. And I think until it's safe for us to be able to speak our piece and not be threatened or worry about the future of our job, we could have more situations like Naomi being great, but not knowing what to say to management because she doesn't want to lose. I mean, think about this. For as she should have been able to carry that thing on her own, and as she out-wrestled Ronda yesterday, that's the most high-profile match we've seen Naomi in years.
Yeah.
That's her first years. You know what I mean? So it's all of those things that make the issue so difficult for people to speak up for what they know is right inside of these organizations.
Yeah. And that's it, and that's one of the reasons why I create like this, for people who are joining who don't necessarily know the history of women's wrestling talk. Like, it started off with 3 people, and it grew and it grew, and it got to a point where I wanted to be beyond me. I wanted it to showcase women, and I was talking to Duke. We were talking offline before we got in here. He's like, he's noticed that there's a huge West Indian contingent. Do you notice that there's a huge Black contingent? That wasn't done on purpose, but if you notice any other podcasts that have, or publications that have more than 2 or 3 hosts or writers, they don't have that many Black folks. I mean, show me one. And it's not done on purpose, but that's, these are the people who came and who want to write, who want to host. And, I thankfully had the knowledge and had the platform to create that. And so it's just kind of one of those things where, yes, support the podcast. Yes, support Naomi. Yes, give all that support. It's just a lot. It's just a lot of work. And, in doing that, I also do realize that in some scenarios, it's going to become, people are going to see it as a Black, because we're the only ones who are showcasing Black History Month. And that automatically is, okay, well, they're trouble. So, we don't, let's let them do their thing over there. Because there have been opportunities that we missed out, where I'm seeing other platforms who don't, I'm not shading other folks, but who don't necessarily have the cachet getting certain opportunities. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, so this what we doing? Like, I literally spoke to you 2 days ago, but that's okay. So, you just have to keep on pushing. But into Meka's point as well, despite who's giving us opportunities, we have with the advent of social media and the advent of stuff like this, we can still talk.
Right.
So I think that was 4 points, but I didn't. You'll make sense of it, Meka. I believe in you. With that
I
said,
got it with quotes. I got it. We're good.
There you go. With that said, let's wrap it up, because I'm sure we could talk all day and give people church all day. But let's wrap it up. And another thing too, I want to do, Meka, maybe not necessarily you, but put it in the chat, is I want to highlight all Black wrestling podcasts, which is something that I missed. So I just thought of that. So let's do that in an article as well. But with that,
our editor in chief is in the comments, so I'm sure she got it noted.
Santana is ready on the, because that's how we do things. I don't really show. I show everything, because sometimes it's a mess on my part. But with that being said, let's wrap it up, and let's just kind of showcase, where people can follow you, what you think people should be following, even if it's not necessarily like your promotion or show, and all that good stuff. So we'll start with Duke.
All right. Once again, it's the Duke Loves Wrestling podcast, RASSLIN. I put out an episode at least once a week, interviewing the top stars of yesterday, today, and tomorrow, with a heavy emphasis on indie wrestlers. You know, right now I'm wearing my my Renegade Twins shirt, and I definitely want to shout out my sisters right there. I don't know if a lot of people realize that, but these are black young ladies here who are kicking some butt on the indie scene. And this is a prime example of what everyone on this panel said. Support what you like, you know? So if I'm going to be on Women's Wrestling Talk, I had to make sure I wore my Renegades Twins shirt and shout them out there, because that's an example of me supporting what I like. You can catch them on AEW, Mission Pro Wrestling, the whole 9 yards. But the main idea is, please just keep showing love where you know the love deserves to be. And that's the other thing. For folks who are doing the right thing, use your voice to continue to uplift them. Because we have a lot of examples of folks who may not necessarily be doing the right thing, or who may be supporting the status quo. So when you see someone or promotion doing the right thing, whatever reputation you have, whatever cachet you have, leverage that to boost them. And that's how we continue to grow together. You know, again, I appreciate being invited on this esteemed panel here at TK, and you know, look forward to collaborating with everybody here in the future as well. So thank you.
There it is. Let's go to Blue.
As I said before, you can find me at the Mixed Tag Show. We do episodes about 2-3 times a month. We also have every Tuesday on Twitch. Put you on. We feature different indie wrestlers or wrestlers that we just think that you should know more about. This upcoming week we have Jordan Blade on Put You On, and she'll be hosted by Jenna. This past week we did Stan Michael, and I did that one. For those that don't know, if you're watching this live right now today, Fight Club Pro has a pay-per-view today, or a show today, in Grapple We Trust. It starts at 4 p.m. Check that out. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the main event is Trishadora versus Big Swole. So make sure you support that today. Support black wrestlers, support black podcasters, support whoever you love. like everybody's been saying, that's the message of the day, is just support whoever you love and help them grow. Because when you help them grow, then, you know, it gets the message out there more. And that's more I can say. Follow me at BlueMagic Grind, Miss Jenna Baby, BABIBEE, The Mixed Tag Show, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. That's what I say.
Shout out to Jenna. I met her for the first time on the podcast we did, I think 2 or 3 days ago.
Okay.
She's awesome.
She's
and she did shout you out. So I'm just saying.
I know.
She's awesome,
I told our bitch in her name. That's why I had to do that whole thing. She's okay.
So shout out to Jenna.
That's how dynamic.
Terrible. That's how. I know. That's how New York is. That's no problem. No problem.
I'm from Jersey. Hold up. Nope, I'm Jersey.
Oh, sorry.
New York.
Jersey. East Coasters. East Coasters.
Right.
There you go. Gerard, how can people find you? What's the good stuff out there?
Sure. You can find me at Bonnerfied on all of the socials. Our podcast is The Faction, and you can find us on the socials at The Faction Show. Lots of cool conversations. We just had a conversation last week or so with AC Mack, the IWTV World Champion. You can also find me at All Things Southern Honor, which I'm honored to commentate there. Our shows are first Friday of every month. All of our shows are on IWTV, so you can check that out as well, and it's all of our commentary as well. Also co-host the podcast for Southern Honor, SHW Pod is where you can find that. And man, so many amazing people to support. Everybody here on this panel, Black Wrestling Alliance, which they've done so much for Black wrestling. They don't get the justice that they are due. I mean, like,
there's no they. There's just one person.
Him and Russell Mex and those guys. I mean, they're really so dedicated. But Adrian, man, is killing it. I mean, it has been for years. So, you know, follow them. And just, I mean, I love what TK is doing here with this platform, women's wrestling. The focus on it is so necessary. So do that. And again, if you get a chance to follow us, what we're doing, do that as well. I am just so honored to be here. Thank you guys for this opportunity. It's been so much fun.
And Miss Meka, where can everybody find you?
I just changed my Instagram handle, so now it matches Twitter. So now it's Meka. Everything is Meka.
I was confused at first. I was like, is this
Meka?
Meka?
You can find me on everything at Meek the Mage. Like I said, I do write here, so you can find my articles here. I did write the open letter to Naomi that's pinned on our Twitter profile. I have some good stuff that's gonna come down the pipeline for Women's Month next month. We've been writing our butts off this month for Black History Month. So, and like I said, new host. So you will see me everywhere. I'll be here tomorrow doing my top 5 moments for Big Swole, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you want to see those, please tune in. Women's Wrestling Talk Pod. But I also want to put you guys onto a brand new promotion that's coming out. It's called Let Wrestling Live. It is a Black woman-owned promotion that's going to be based in North Carolina.
Nice.
Their debut show is coming July 16th. It's called First Day Out. They got some great people that are going to be on the card. One of my favorite people in the world, lovely Lola Blue, is on this team, and they are working very hard. Some of the people that were involved with the Black Wrestling Draws hashtag, things like that on social media, these are people that are very connected and listening to what we want, that want to give us that. So you can follow them at Twitter at Let Wrestling LV, not live, just LV. They're posting a lot of good things. If you follow me on anything, I'm the indie prima donna. I'm gonna post all the indie stuff and women's stuff and things that I can. But yes, keep an eye out for Let Wrestling Live. I think they're gonna be doing some really big things in the near future.
Yes. And I just want to piggyback off of that. Shout out to when she said we were doing a lot of writing. It wasn't me. Shout to Santana and Meka and the whole writing crew for Women's Wrestling Talk. I said, I came up with that vision. Santana and I worked it out, and we have, amazing writers who put it together. And the goal was every day, because, when people think Black wrestlers, some people only can think of a handful, but there's a ridiculous amount. And, we didn't even get to highlight all of them. So definitely shout out to Santana, our editor-in-chief. She's in the chat, and Meka and all the other writers who, put this together. Shout out to you, gentlemen. I was saying before you hopped on, there's just so much deep voices. I wasn't used to that. So shout out to you, gentlemen, for, hopping onto the podcast and, discussing it. Cause I knew, again, shout out to Black Wrestling Alliance for, putting us together and kind of creating that atmosphere. I knew it was going to be a good show, and I knew you guys had amazing perspectives and things to say. So, just thank you for hopping on. Thank you for, I think am I the only one on the West Coast? I think so. So thank you for me for waking up so early. But thank you guys so much for coming on. Thank you guys for, hopping in the chat. We have some new people in the chat. Thank you guys. If you just are wondering where to find everything, you want to find all those articles, you can go to www.talkpod.com. You can also go to all our social media, www.talkpod. We have a lot of shows going on. So Meka is going to be doing our top 5 for Big Swole tomorrow. We're also going to have our after show for Raw tomorrow. We also have news on Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific time. We also have Friday. We have our SmackDown show as well, after show. 8:15 Pacific time. You guys can translate that. And then also, you want to catch our shows from yesterday. We had our oh my gosh, where's my words at? Elimination Chamber and No Surrender. We did those together because, people are not showing Impact love. So we show Impact love. So if you want to watch the after show, get the perspectives, it's all there too. So you can head up to our YouTube channel, or you can also find that on our website. Other than that, you can find me on everything at TK Trinidad. We will be highlighting a lot of podcasts because there's a lot. And well, yes, we will, meaning that somebody here will be posting on our social media. But other than that, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you want to hit up any of these gentlemen and Meka, please go and support. I definitely say go and follow them first, go and listen to their podcast and share their podcast to everybody else. And then tag us and make sure, let us know that you did it. Because, some people say, yeah, I did it, and they didn't really do it. So please go and do that.
Hold them accountable.
I know. I'm just saying. Other than that, thank you guys so much. Till next time. Ciao.